All right, so in terms of coding, we are done. We have all of our classes working. We've got our, well, we don't know if they're working, but they're done anyway. We finished coding them. We have our TP controller class. We have our TP motor class. We've now finally finished TP camera. And now it's time for the fun part. We get to test and see and hope that everything is working.
So we'll just jump back in. I'm going to close up a little thing, kind of draw out the anticipation of actually testing.
I see. Then just get it done. Come on.
All right. Well,
these people have spent all this time coding. Let them see the fruits of their labor.
All right. Well, immediately after we hit play, our camera has jumped to behind our character.
And directly, slightly above.
Slightly above.
Looks good.
So far. All right. Let's see. We move. Our camera has a little bit of lag behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So we can move forward and back. Now let's see if we can orbit our camera. Hold the right mouse button down, and we can spin our camera around.
Yep.
So, oh, look.
Yeah, there is that.
Yep. All right, so we can orbit. All right, let's see if we can zoom in and out. Uh-oh. No zooming. Oh, there it goes.
This is an interesting problem to try to solve.
So we're getting intermittent mouse movement, and we ran into this problem where it's like, well, geez, what could cause this?
Yeah, the very first thing I said was, "Is your mouse broken?"
Yep.
And because we're using was it the World of Warcraft gaming mouse, and it's entirely possible that the last person to play WoW on it just really destroyed the mouse wheel. So that was the first place the brain went, but that didn't make any sense because we came out here into Unity, and you can roll the mouse wheel, and everything works exactly fine. So that tells you, all right, obviously something's wrong with the code. So where did your eyes go first?
Well, first I started looking at our distance move to make sure our distance move wasn't a problem. Mm-hmm. That all looked right. So the next thing I did is where we actually take our mouse wheel input.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at this, and that looks all right. And it's like, well, here's our dead zone stuff. Well, that looks right. Hold on, what is our dead zone set to?
What are we setting the dead zone to? 0.1, which is like a whole tenth of what that axis should be able to achieve.
Right. We need to set dead zone to 0.01, not 0.1. So if we change that to 0.01, save out, jump back into Unity, and hit play.
So you're having to just fling that mouse with everything you had to get motion.
And I still do because it didn't save out and compile.
Right. No worries.
Yeah. This one, it happens every once in a while. Make a little change, save it back, jump back in, give it a sec, go ahead and hit play. And now our mouse wheel.
Nice, consistent mouse motion. You can still feel the smoothing on it, so it's not like a direct effect of the rotation. I'm sorry, the distance.
Mm-hmm.
But it is there, and it is now working now that we've cleared that out.
And if I select main camera, we can see all of our exposed fields. So
actually, I'm glad. I would have been really distraught if we'd gone through all that and had absolutely nothing to fix when we got done. So let's take a look at what we have.
All right. Well, as you can see, our character can be steered with our mouse just by holding down the right mouse button.
Right. And again, just as a thing, you may want to remove that right mouse button check depending on your particular game. It just made sense for us.
Right. So let's first, since how we already ran into a problem with the mouse wheel, let's adjust its sensitivity. So let's jump this up to 15. So we go back. Now we can scroll in a lot faster.
Yeah.
But our limits are kind of restrictive in this case. So let's set our max limit. Now we can get much further away from our character. And we can get closer. So we can put that back. Now we have distance smoothing. We can turn this off.
And then we have a direct relationship of mouse wheel.
Right, with no smoothing left.
Yeah. So at least you can turn that off in that way.
Mm-hmm. Now if we hold mouse and we move our camera, we get a nice decent amount of motion. If we think that's not enough, we can increase this. And now we get a whole lot.
Now, I mean, at 10 frames a second, they're probably not even detecting that you're even spinning. It just looks like gibberish. So, yeah, he's screaming around the player right now.
Right now, I am barely moving the mouse at all.
Yeah. So that's doing what you'd expect it to.
Conversely, we can take it down to 0.5.
and then it takes forever to get around the player.
Then this is me winging the mouse around right now.
And it's so funny when you do that. I hate it too because it makes the mouse feel heavy. It's amazing how much that changes, the feel of the input to just make your mouse sensitivity too low.
Now, the smoothing for horizontal and vertical smoothing. This has an interesting side effect.
Yeah.
If we take our smoothing too high, let's say 1, and we move our camera really, really fast, our camera actually dives in to our character and out.
That's because we end up cutting across our circle in order to make that, because we're not even really doing a circle. We're doing a motion that is constantly, it's like move a little, rotate a little, move a little, rotate a little. So if you were to draw this out at a really high granularity, our circle, our orbit, is actually a faceted polygon-like shape.
Mm-hmm.
And as you start to increase the smoothing, you're knocking out the possible edges you can run into. And so in order to cut corners, you end up cutting away a large chunk of your orbital circle if your smoothing is too high.
All right, I just wanted you to be aware of that if you start dialing in numbers and you got something really weird that you weren't aware of.
Well, hang on, I'm going to steal
from
you
go ahead.
Real quick, just to kind of take that point and really, really drill it into your brain, because that's always nice. We've been talking up to this point about having this orbital circle, but technically what's happening is we're updating our position and then rotating our camera. So we do an update that's a straight line, and then we rotate back in, and then we update again. And if you were to really zoom in and look at this from above, it would look something like this, with all these little straight lines.
Right, and the more you move your mouse, those segments become larger and larger.
That's right. And so if you have a huge sweeping motion of the mouse combined with a very large smooth, then you start really cutting corners to make this happen. And that's why you get that flyby effect, where you fly into the character. In fact, at one point, you would cut so many, and you kept moving the camera during the motion, so we actually flew in, and then we flew back out, because by the time we didn't even have time to cross the circle before you had rotated all the way around to here, and so we flew in and then cut right back out again. So you just have to be a little delicate with that setting.
Right.
It's all yours. I don't really need Photoshop anymore.
Yeah, no problem. But I wanted everybody to be aware of that. Now, the last two settings that we have here... Oh, Y Smooth works the same way, by the way. The last two settings are the Y Min and Y Max. If we bring our camera all the way up to the top, we can see we can't go over the top.
Right.
I can take our max limit and drop this down to, let's say, 40. And now I can only get about half as high. It won't let me go any higher. Now, our min limit does the same thing, but below the camera. This prevents us from going directly below it, but it also exposes another problem. Our camera has no idea of the geometry. It will pass through it. It has no occlusion test, and it has no collision test.
Right, and that's just one of the inherent flaws in this design. It's just because this is a very basic, very simple example, those factors are simply not taken into account.
So if I pass behind an object, I can completely occlude my character, and I can't see it anymore.
As a matter of fact, yeah, if you just keep going, you can drive the camera right through that.
And this isn't a very desirable effect.
No.
And something that you would want to put on the market.
No, but it works for a basic example to kind of get your feet wet.
Right. Now, there's another flaw with this. In our first video, I showed that we put this little ramp over here, so eventually we can teach our character how to slide down.
Yeah.
If we go up, no problem. We can, get on top of our little box. We can even move our camera underneath, look at them from above. Great. Well, let's jump off.
Oh, yeah.
We can't do that.
Right, we can never come back down now.
Right, because we're not a rigid body. We're actually a character controller.
And that character controller was great at helping us climb that ramp, but there's no functionality to pull us back down to the ground.
Right, it has no idea, no concept of gravity whatsoever. So that makes falling impossible as it is. We can't jump.
Well, actually, you bring up an interesting point, because really early on, when we were talking about setting up this project, we said that we were going to be handling this whole character controller setup, or third-person character setup, in multiple stages, 3 to be precise. And the first we had was the basic setup. You've now seen that. The basic setup handles orbiting of the camera, and it handles character motion. There's a lot of things it doesn't handle. I mean, this is pretty much it. We can move the camera. We can orbit. We can move orbit the camera around. We can move the character. Now the camera, the character does move in relation to the camera's orientation.
The camera will follow the character around the scene.
There is smoothing, all sorts of great things, but this leads us. And now that it's like we started off by saying you were here. I think that's how we started this whole thing out way back when. We're kind of done here. So you can go ahead and check the box and say you've completed this. Now, if you'd care to progress, the next set of videos that we'll be taking a look at, we're going to cover the enhanced version of this. Now, the enhanced version is going to take into account a lot of different things, but some of the critical things, some of the really high level, majorly important things, are things like gravity. And along with gravity, we're going to bring in the ability to jump. The ability to defy gravity, at least for a moment or two. Now, what are some of the other things we'll be exploring?
We're going to add the ability for the character to slide down a slope that is too steep for them to stand on.
Okay. What else?
We're going to add a new class called the TP Animator, third-person animator. Now, its functionality in this next set of videos is limited, but it's going to start introducing where we're going with it.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far into that, but it is going to be a very important class. At least for starting, it's going to get a few things kind of established at the ground level and enhanced, but it's going to be critical once we make it to our next set after that, which will be for the biped version.
Right. But what our TP Animator is going to provide for us in the enhanced set of videos, it's going to figure out from the player's input that the character controller has processed what direction we're moving it.
I'm going to put it a different way. We're going to say movement states. We will have a state for moving forward, a state for moving backward, a state for moving left and right, a state for moving forward, right, for all of our diagonals. All of these are going to be stored in states, and we're going to leverage on those states to get some various other functionality. Now, what else?
Well,
because there's some other really cool stuff in here, too, you haven't even mentioned yet.
All right. Well, still with this, we're going to... I want to tell them why we need to do this.
I know.
Because we want to be able to adjust the speed of the character.
That's right.
Because right now, our character moves the same speed every direction. So we want to be able to get different speeds depending on what type of motion that you're doing. But the big thing, and the complex thing, and the thing that we're going to spend a lot of time on theory, is we're going to make the camera aware of the level.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure that the camera is not going to be able to pass through the geometry. It's actually going to collide with things in the world. We're going to deal with a situation where if the player is occluded and the camera can no longer see the player, the camera is going to move itself automatically to get to a position where it can see the character again.
Yeah. And that's where it starts to get really cool.
Right. And this is where we start, if you remember way back in the intro, when we were showing the built-in third-person controller that you get with Unity. Our camera didn't do any of that either.
Right.
We couldn't orbit it, but they had an animated character. We're building up to that, but we've already added some functionality that you didn't get with that controller.
Right. By the time we make it to the level of adding in a biped, we're going to be pretty feature-rich.
Right. And we've already got a camera that we can rotate. Couldn't do that with the original. But now we're going to make that camera even smarter. We're going to make it level aware.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that we're covering in the enhanced set of videos.
So we're going to say, go here next. This is your next goal and what we're going to be tackling in the next series of videos. But really, I think that covers everything that I wanted to discuss here. Lee, is there anything you want to throw in?
No, other than thank you for joining us on this.
Yeah.
And just remember, this is a stepped process that leads you from the simple game that you may have played with and getting you up to a more advanced biped character. And this is just a stepping stone to our MMO class that's coming up, where we're going to take this even further, and we're going to make a production level character control system that you would use in an MMO.
That's right. And that MMO class is something that we're going to be making available to our member-sponsor subscribers over on 3D Buzz. It's going to be a huge opportunity, but it will have limited seating just so that we can invest the appropriate amount of time with our students. We have to do that. And so if you're interested, please look into member sponsorship over on 3D Buzz. We are constantly updating the status of that class and how things are going along. Lee, I wanted to thank you for your outstanding work in coding all of this and putting up with me. And folks, that is going to wrap things up for this video and this series of videos in creating our basic camera and character system. Thank you very much for joining us.